So we managed to get through a few weeks without there being anything too dramatic in Welsh rugby, and then arguably one of the worst things has come out, and one of the clubs, or one of the regions, Cardiff, is gonna go into administration. What does this mean? I don't know. My name's Christian, and this is the Welsh Sports Channel. So this is a really emerging situation. More stuff coming out all the time. Still not an awful lot of details coming from the Cardiff board and stuff like that. So we're dealing with like a moving situation. But I thought, as we're a Welsh rugby channel and I'm a big Cardiff fan, we should touch on this. This is a really sad day, I think. The only benefit, the only good thing I think we can come out of this is the fact that it is Cardiff and not one of the other regions, and I mean that by the fact that the WRU can't really let the capital city team, go into liquidation and disband, given the history and everything. I'm sure you've heard a million times since this story came out. The team that's produced most British Lions, and just all of the history of the great players. And if this had been like the Dragons or the Ospreys or something, I don't know whether the WRU may have stepped in. They might have, but then maybe they would have in a year's time said, look, we can't find a buyer, we're getting rid of you. Yeah, it's a really, really sad situation. Luckily, the Cardiff are going to go into administration. This doesn't mean they're going to disband or anything like that. It just means that the current setup can't afford whatever the debt is or whatever the bill is that's due. And for that reason, they have to basically look for someone who can. Whether they'll be able to find someone is probably unlikely, not straight away. I think the Dragons, when this happened to them and the WRU took over, it took about 6 years to re-hand it back to private ownership. So, this is not going to be a simple process. The worrying thing for me is Cardiff are probably, not probably, they have the highest average attendance out of all the other grounds. So, they bring in a strong revenue stream that way. Things on the pitch are seemingly getting better to where they were. They look like they were bringing in some, talent this next season, attracting some players in like Basham and players like that. So it's really disappointing to think that they were in such a precarious situation, but I guess it just highlights how precarious it is for a professional rugby team in this current climate and a Welsh rugby team, and just shows, this situation actually has happened quite a few times in the past, but they always had Peter Thomas, who came in with his basically a blank checkbook and just give whatever they needed to keep the club going, just out of pure love for the club. And obviously they sold once. Unfortunately, Peter Thomas passed away. The shares and his main stakeholding got sold to a consortium which was Helford Capital, to Cardiff supporters, and they made this sort of company to basically have ownership, and it's kind of murky. They passed all the due diligence, everything looked well. The constant sort of conversations that have been coming out from Cardiff are that these guys are wanting to put more money in, and they wanting to be able to attract players in, and revamp the Arms Park, which is an old ground now and probably needs a bit of a sort of tidy up a bit. Apparently all these things were planned to happen. And what the reason is, we don't know. But reading different things online, and there is some conflict in reports. But apparently they were expecting some Middle Eastern money as an investment, or some Middle Eastern company to basically give them an investment, and that money was just never forthcoming, apparently. And they then, I guess, maybe they don't have the funds that they expected to have, or they portrayed that they were going to have, and for that reason, whatever bill, we don't know, something's come up, and there's obviously a deficit. We know all of the regions are running at deficits pretty much, and at the end of the year when the bill is due, they're usually a couple of million short, and someone has to plug that gap, and that's what the benefactors have been doing. And it seems as though Helford Capital, for whatever reason, can't or are unwilling to plug that gap. So they've got no choice but going to an administration, and luckily the WRU have basically said we're going to step in and secure the future of the club. So the good thing, thank God that none of the, players is one thing, okay, right? It's obviously horrendous for the players if their club just all of a sudden disbands, but generally these players can go and play elsewhere and get picked up. And like it happened with the Celtic Warriors, they all sort of went to different places. The more concerning thing would be for the staff of the ground and just match day people and all of these people who work in the background. So thankfully these guys and girls are going to keep their job, and that's what the really important thing is. All this talk about we should cut region and stuff, I think it gets overlooked that is, you're cutting people's jobs at the end of the day. And the current climate is tricky, not to get into politics, but it's not as simple as let's just cut a region and fix Welsh rugby. You've got to think of the human cost of this as well. So the good thing is the WRU are willing to step in, and whether they're going to be like a placeholder for 6 months or a year until they can shop around and find an investor, or maybe a group of investors similar to like what the Scarlets have, and the Dragons have a couple of people who are the main investors. I don't know. Maybe given the fact that they are wanting to change things and have a bit more control as the WRU of the regions. There's no evidence for this, but maybe they might want to keep Cardiff, I don't know, and build them into like the more super club maybe, and give them more resources than everyone else. I don't know if that would be possible under the PRA and stuff like that, but you don't know, you never know with the WRU. But it's good that they are willing to step in and they haven't let a club go, because that would be disastrous, I think, especially it being Cardiff. But this situation is crazy. I was reading this morning now that it's emerged that Warburton resigned from the board a couple of weeks ago because he wanted to focus on his other businesses. Whether that's true or not, or maybe he saw the writing on the wall. He copped a lot of flack after his comments about getting rid of a region when he was on the Cardiff board. So maybe under that pressure, he kind of sloped away. So this situation is constantly changing, and just at the moment, the future of Cardiff looks like it's safe, but in a year's time, if no investors come in, and it's not going to be easy to get an investor to come in because you're basically coming in to take over a money pit, because that's what a professional rugby team is at the moment. It's not like a Premier League team where you can actually make money or siphon money out the club, similar to like what the Glazers did at Man United. A rugby team is like, we're just plummeting money in, and Scrum 5 mentioned that there's no assets in the club. They don't own the ground, so you're not going to get anything that you can get a return on your investment. So that's going to be really difficult. You're going to have to find some guys who are really passionate about Cardiff rugby, and they just want to and are willing to dump some money into the club to keep it going. Or with the WRU, just keep hold of it. Like, I don't see a point, even if it's 2 or 3 years down the line, where the WRU have still had ownership of Cardiff, and then they say, right, we're not affording this, we're going to get rid of it. But then affording it is the other issue, because we know that the money issues have been really bad in Welsh rugby at the moment, and this is just another blow, and it's really, really worrying. The questions will be, what caused it? Why can't Helford Capital close that gap? And if they can't, then why were they allowed to take over the club in the first place? And what is the future plan for Cardiff? None of these questions have been answered yet, and they probably won't for a while, may never be. But that's the questions we need to be asking as fans. But for now, that is where we are. I just thought I'd talk about it, and sort of, at least we know the club is not going to disband. So, the people who won 3 regions are still going to have to hold on for that one. So I'm sort of glad that it was Cardiff, even though they're my team, because they can't really get rid of Cardiff. So yeah, that's all from me. If more news comes out or like there's something interesting, I'll obviously talk about it with you guys. But for now, I will leave it with you and catch you on the next one.